The galaxy had seen many wars, but none like the ones led by General Karen of the Zyran Empire. She was a name whispered in fear across 10 star systems. Her silver armor shone like fire under the twin suns, and her violet eyes burned with pride. In every battle she stood tall, never defeated. To her people, she was not just a warrior, she was legend. That evening, Karen stood in the grand arena of Tyrus Prime. Thousands of aliens cheered her name, their voices echoing across the stars. Another victory. Another conquered world. In the center stood a group of defeated soldiers, humans captured from the latest skirmish near the border. They were small, fragile-looking compared to her kind. Yet one of them, standing in the back, met her gaze without fear. Karen lifted her blade and shouted proudly, her voice carried by the amplifiers, "Let it be known. No human can ever defeat me. Not in combat, not in strength, not in spirit." The crowd roared with approval. They laughed at the humans, throwing pieces of metal and shouting insults. But the tall human at the back didn't flinch. His uniform was torn, blood on his face, but his eyes were calm, steady. His name was Captain Eli Ward, a soldier from Earth who had fought longer than he cared to admit. When Karin's gaze locked on him, something strange stirred in her chest. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't angry either. He was silent, still watching. "Do you not fear me, human?" she called out, her voice sharp. Eli tilted his head slightly. "Fear you?" he said softly. "I've seen worse things than pride." The crowd gasped at his words. Even Karin blinked in surprise. "You dare speak that way to me?" He nodded slowly. "If words offend you, General, imagine what my blade might do." The air froze. The guards raised their weapons, waiting for Karin's order. But instead of rage, a slow smirk curved across her lips. She stepped closer, her boots echoing on the arena floor. "You challenge me, human?" she asked, lowering her weapon just enough to make the moment dangerous. "I do," Eli said, voice steady. "You said no human can defeat you. Let's find out if that's true." The arena erupted into laughter. Aliens shouted, jeering, mocking the human. "Kill him fast."
"Make him kneel!"
"Show the galaxy what happens to Earth's weaklings." But Karin raised a hand, silencing them all. Her voice grew low and sharp. "Then it shall be a duel, one-on-one, strength against strength, courage against fate." Eli bowed his head slightly, then looked up again with that same calm expression. "Accepted." Karin turned to the guards. "Prepare the arena." The ground shifted, metal plates sliding open. The combat ring rose from below, steel, fire, and glowing energy walls that shimmered like blue glass. The temperature dropped. The stars above seemed to lean closer, waiting to witness what would come. As Karin removed her cloak, her muscles flexed under her armor. She towered over Eli, almost twice his height. "Do you understand what you're doing?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "I'm making history," she laughed. "Or dying trying," he smiled faintly. "We'll see." When the signal blared, Karin moved first, faster than lightning. Her sword struck the ground where Eli had been standing, sparks flying, but he rolled aside quick and smooth. His movement wasn't clumsy, it was trained, controlled. The audience fell silent. No human had ever dodged her first strike before. Karin narrowed her eyes. "Interesting," she muttered, circling him. "Maybe you're not as weak as you look." Eli said nothing. He focused, breathing slow, calculating her every step. He had studied alien combat styles before. He knew she relied on power and intimidation. He had to rely on speed and precision. Her next swing came low and fast. Eli blocked it with a small plasma knife, but the impact threw him back several feet. His arms shook from the force. "Still alive," Karin said with a grin. "That's rare." Eli straightened, wiping blood from his lip. "You'll have to do better than that." That made her smile widen. For the first time in years, she felt something new, excitement. Their blades clashed again. Sparks burst into the air. The sound echoed like thunder. She was stronger, yes, but he was clever. Every time she thought she had him cornered, he slipped away, forcing her to move faster, harder. The crowd started to chant. Some still mocked him, but others began to whisper, amazed. 5 minutes passed. No one had ever lasted this long. Finally, Karin slammed her sword into the ground, creating a wave of energy that sent Eli crashing to the floor. His armor sparked, his breathing heavy. She stood over him, blade raised. "This is where your courage ends," she said. But Eli smiled weakly. "No," he whispered. "This is where your lesson begins." Her blade paused. For just a heartbeat, she hesitated. His words echoed through her mind, unfamiliar almost. Human. The arena lights dimmed, leaving only the glowing blue walls of energy surrounding them. The sound of the crowd faded into a distant hum. For the first time in her long life, General Karin felt something unusual inside her chest. Anticipation. Across the ring, Captain Eli Ward stood tall, one hand gripping his plasma knife, the other steadying his breath. His uniform was torn, his face bruised, yet his eyes stayed locked on hers. Calm, unshaken, focused. Karin tilted her head slightly, studying him like a predator watching prey. "You fight well for someone so fragile," she said with a smirk. Eli gave a small nod. "And you talk too much for someone who's supposed to be winning." The remark made her laugh. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not her soldiers, not even the Emperor. There was something dangerous about this human's confidence. Then, without warning, she moved. Her sword cut through the air with a scream, sending a wave of energy that split the floor. Eli leapt aside, sliding across the metal surface. He landed hard, sparks flying from his boots, then sprinted forward, his knife slashing at her side. The blade barely scratched her armor, but the speed of his movement made her pause. He was fast, too fast for any normal human. Karin swung again, this time with real force. The impact shook the arena. Eli blocked, his arm trembling under the pressure, his knife glowing red-hot from the friction. He twisted, used her momentum, and kicked her knee. She stumbled back only for a moment, but long enough for the crowd to gasp. A human had just made the alien general take a step back. Karin's eyes narrowed, glowing brighter with fury and fascination. "Interesting," she muttered. Eli straightened, panting slightly. "You said no human can defeat you," he said. "Maybe you were wrong." The word struck deeper than she expected. For years she had been undefeated. Every challenger fell before her, strong warriors, skilled assassins, proud captains. Yet this human stood his ground as if he'd fought her kind before. Karin roared and charged, her armor lighting up in violet fire. She struck left, right, down, each swing faster than the last. Eli dodged, rolled, blocked, barely. Sparks lit the air like fireworks. Every hit that missed him burned the ground, leaving glowing scars. Her voice echoed through the arena. "Why do you fight?" "You know you can't win." Eli's voice was calm, even as he bled from a cut on his arm. "I'm not fighting to win," he said quietly. "I'm fighting to understand you." Karin froze mid-swing. "Understand me?" He looked up at her, eyes steady. "You fight because you're afraid of losing. Not battles, yourself." Her heart skipped. For a moment her breathing faltered. How could this human see through her so easily? Anger rushed through her veins. She struck again, harder, faster, desperate to silence that voice. But Eli's movements became sharper, more focused. His knife hummed with energy. It was adapting to her strikes, scanning her combat rhythm. He sidestepped, ducked under her swing, and struck her armor's joint near the shoulder. A spark of blue light burst out. Karin stepped back, shocked. The hit hadn't hurt her much, but it had connected. The audience shouted, their cheers turning into chaotic noise. Some screamed for her to destroy him. Others began to chant his name, Human. Human! Human! The sound made her chest tighten. She couldn't lose, not here, not in front of her people. She activated her battle core, and violet energy exploded around her. The shockwave threw Eli backward into the wall. His knife clattered to the floor. Karin approached slowly, her armor glowing brighter than the suns above. "It's over," she said. "You fought well. For a human." But Eli didn't move. He pushed himself up, coughing, eyes blazing with that same quiet strength. "It's not over," he said softly. "It's only beginning." He reached to his wrist and tapped something, a hidden control. His veins lit with faint silver lines, energy flowing through his body. The crowd gasped again. Karin stepped back slightly. "What is this?" she demanded. Eli looked at her, his voice low. "I'm done holding back." He dashed forward faster than before. His blade met hers, and the impact sent a thunderous echo across the arena. Her power met his, light colliding with light. She had never felt resistance like this. He wasn't just fighting anymore, he was matching her. The clash shook the air. Sparks turned into streaks of lightning. Metal screamed against metal. Then in the chaos, Eli whispered close to her ear, "You wanted a real challenge. Here it is." She pushed him away, breathing heavily. The crowd was screaming now, half cheering, half terrified. For the first time, General Karin, the undefeated conqueror of worlds, realized she might not win this duel. As their blades locked again, their eyes met. Warrior to warrior, pride to pride. Something shifted. For the briefest second, she didn't see a weak human anymore. She saw an equal. And that scared her more than any weapon ever could. Dust swirled in the arena, glowing blue beneath the energy walls. General Corinne's chest heaved as she stared at the human still standing. No one, no being in all her wars had lasted this long. Captain Eli Ward wiped blood from his mouth. His breathing was slow, measured. He looked smaller now against the towering alien, yet something in his stance radiated quiet strength. Karen's voice thundered across the ring. "Why won't you fall, human? What drives you to keep fighting when defeat is certain?" Eli met her gaze. "Because giving up would mean proving you right." That answer unsettled her more than any weapon. She lunged forward, striking with the fury of a storm. Her sword cut arcs of purple light, each one strong enough to crush a vehicle. Eli ducked, rolled, and blocked, but the final hit landed on his arm. His knife flew from his hand. The crowd cheered wildly. "Finish him!" they shouted. "Make the human crawl." Karen raised her blade, but as she swung down, Eli caught the edge with both hands. The energy burned his palms, smoke rising from his gloves, yet he held it. Her eyes widened. "Impossible." Eli's voice came low, almost mechanical, releasing limiters. For a split second, everything went silent. Then the implant in his neck glowed silver. Energy pulsed through his veins, spreading to his eyes. The crowd gasped as light patterns ran beneath his skin. Alien technology fused with human biology. Karen stepped back. "What are you?" Eli's answer was calm. "Human, just improved." He grabbed his fallen knife and in a blur of motion dashed forward. The air cracked behind him. His speed was unreal, almost teleporting. His strike hit Karen's armor joint again, sending sparks into the air. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The alien general blocked his next attack, but her movements had lost rhythm. Each hit came faster than the last, his strength climbing with every second. For the first time in her life, she was the one retreating. Eli's mind raced as his implant fed him data, angles, speed, weakness points. But even through the power, he felt something else, pain. His body wasn't built for this. Every move was burning him from the inside. Karen swung high. Eli ducked low and slammed his elbow into her chest plate. The impact sent both of them sliding apart. She looked down. A crack, tiny but visible, split across her armor. Her pride burned hotter than the wound. "No one has ever done that." Eli breathed hard. "Then I guess today's full of firsts." Rage and fascination twisted inside her. She attacked again, and their blades collided midair, releasing a shockwave that shook the stadium. The barrier walls flickered. Around them, the crowd no longer cheered. They watched in stunned silence. Every being could feel it. Something far greater than a duel was happening. Karen roared, forcing Eli back step by step. He blocked, but his implant began to overheat, warning lights flashing across his wrist. "Temperature critical," a robotic voice whispered in his ear. Still, he refused to stop. "Just one more." He dodged her final strike and swung upward, his blade grazing her cheek. A drop of violet blood rolled down her skin. The mighty general touched it in disbelief. Their eyes locked again, warrior and warrior, pride and pain. Karen lowered her sword slightly. "You bleed me," she said softly. "You are the first." Eli, swaying, smiled faintly. "And yet you're still standing. Figures." She could have ended him right there. He was barely holding on, his energy drained, his hands trembling. But something inside her refused. Killing him now would mean losing the strange respect growing in her heart. Instead, she deactivated her battle core. "You've proven your strength, human. Surrender and I'll spare your life." Eli shook his head weakly. "You still don't understand. I didn't come to survive. I came to see if a heart like yours can still feel." The words cut deeper than any blade. Karen froze, her grip loosening. For a heartbeat, she saw herself reflected in his eyes. Not as a conqueror, but as someone lonely, trapped behind armor and pride. Then a sudden tremor hit. The arena ground cracked. Eli's implant flared too bright, releasing a shockwave that threw both of them apart. Smoke filled the air. Karen coughed, her vision blurred. "Human?" she called out, no answer. She scanned through the haze and saw only his knife glowing faintly among the rubble. The crowd erupted again, chanting her name. "Corinne! Corinne!" Victory! But she didn't raise her sword. She looked at the empty spot where Eli had fallen and whispered to herself, "No, this doesn't feel like victory." As medics rushed in, she turned away, hiding the strange ache in her chest. She had fought countless enemies, but none like this one. This human had bled her armor. And something deeper. The arena that once shook with cheers now stood in silence. The fires had faded, leaving only smoke and dust hanging in the air. Broken metal hissed softly where plasma had scorched the floor. General Karen stood alone at the center, her blade planted into the cracked ground. Her armor, once shining like the heart of a star, now bore deep cuts and dents. Her breathing was heavy, uneven. Around her, the medics dragged away the fallen human's body, or what was left of it under the debris. She didn't look away. For the first time in her life, victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt hollow, cold. Her advisor approached carefully, bowing. "General, the human is confirmed dead. The Emperor awaits your report." Karen didn't reply. Her violet eyes were fixed on the spot where Captain Eli Ward had stood just minutes ago. The memory of his final words echoed in her mind. "I didn't come to survive. I came to see if a heart like yours can still feel." She had laughed at many last words before, but not this time. These ones stayed. That night, she dismissed her guards and locked herself in her private chamber aboard the battle cruiser Eclipse Spear. The ship hummed softly, orbiting the planet below. Outside her window, the stars looked distant, cold witnesses to her unease. She sat without her armor, only the faint scar on her cheek reminding her of him. She touched it absent-mindedly. He was fast, too fast for a human. Her mind replayed the fight again and again. His movements, his courage, his refusal to bow. Even when broken and bleeding, he had stood tall. He had looked at her not as a god, but as an equal. That thought unsettled her more than pain ever could. She opened a datapad, calling for the human's combat file. The system projected his image, Eli Ward, Captain of Earth's Defense Unit, age 32. No genetic enhancements listed. No special rank beyond his command. "Impossible," she whispered. "No human fights like that." The ship's AI spoke gently. "General, may I remind you, his body has not yet been fully examined. Recovery teams report irregular readings." Corinne's eyes narrowed. "Irregular?" "Yes, General. Biosigns fluctuated moments before the explosion. We cannot confirm if death was immediate." For a moment, her heart skipped. Then she forced a laugh. "You're suggesting he's alive?" The AI paused. "Unconfirmed, but not impossible." Karen leaned back, staring at the stars again. "If he's alive," she whispered, "then what are you, human?" Hours passed. She couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, bloodied yet calm, staring up at her like he saw something in her that even she had forgotten existed. She had faced assassins, monsters, and machines. None had shaken her like one man's quiet courage. By morning, she gave a command. "Bring me the human's remains, personally." When the guards hesitated, she barked, "That's an order." The room filled with tension. Soldiers exchanged nervous glances, but obeyed. Minutes later, 2 medics rolled in a containment pod. Inside, beneath cracked armor and blood-stained fabric, lay the human. His body was burned, but his face was calm, almost peaceful. Karen stepped closer. She didn't know why, but her hand trembled as she reached toward the glass. "You should have died with pride, not peace," she muttered. The medic started to speak. "General, we can cremate the body if—" "Leave," she interrupted. Her tone left no room for argument. When the door shut, Corinne pressed her hand against the pod. "Why do I feel like you're not gone?" And then, something flickered on the monitor. A heartbeat, faint, irregular. But there Corinne froze. "No!" She tapped the panel, thinking it was an error. The heartbeat appeared again, stronger this time. The human's eyes twitched beneath his closed lids. Karen stepped back, heart pounding. "He's alive." For a long moment, she just stood there, caught between disbelief and awe. No human should have survived that battle. Not against her. Not after that explosion. "Why?" she whispered. "What keeps you alive, Eli Ward?" The monitors blinked steadily, matching the rhythm of her own heartbeat. She turned off the alarms and locked the door again. The Empire would see this as weakness, a disgrace. But she didn't care. Something deep inside her refused to let him die, so she made a silent decision. If you came to see if my heart can feel human, then maybe you'll get your answer. She placed her palm gently on the glass and whispered, "Rest. I'll guard you this time." Outside, the stars drifted slowly past her window. The galaxy slept, unaware that somewhere aboard the Eclipse Spear, the greatest warrior of the Zyran Empire sat beside a wounded human, watching over the very enemy who had almost defeated her. The lights inside the Eclipse Spear's medical bay were dim, humming with the soft pulse of life support machines. For 3 days, General Corinne hadn't left the chamber. She stood beside the pod where Captain Eli Ward lay unconscious, his face pale but alive. No one in her army knew the truth. The report she sent to the Emperor said the human had perished in combat, but Corinne couldn't bring herself to destroy the man who had made her question everything she once believed. Every few hours she checked the monitor, his heartbeat slow but steady. Every time it beeped, she felt relief she didn't understand. On the 4th day, his eyes opened. At first they flickered weakly, lost in confusion. But when he saw her standing there, armor shining faintly in the half-light, his gaze sharpened. "You—" His voice was dry, cracking. "I thought I was dead." Corinne turned away to hide the emotion on her face. "You nearly were. Your body should have failed." But somehow it didn't. Eli tried to sit up, groaning. "Guess you don't know humans that well," she frowned. "I know humans are fragile," he smiled faintly. "Then maybe it's time you learn we break differently." Corinne didn't reply. She stood in silence for a moment before stepping closer. "Why did you fight me that way?" she asked softly. "You knew you couldn't win. You knew I'd destroy you." Eli's eyes moved toward her slowly. "Maybe it wasn't about winning. Then what was it about? Proving something. That even in a galaxy full of power, mercy still matters." Corinne blinked. His words felt heavy, honest. "Mercy?" He nodded weakly. "You fight like someone trying to forget what she lost." She stiffened. "You think you understand me?" Eli coughed lightly, forcing a small laugh. "I don't need to. I just saw it in your eyes when you hesitated." Karen said nothing. The silence between them stretched, heavy but not cold. Finally, she whispered, "You should hate me. I almost killed you." Eli looked at her with a tired smile. "You didn't. Maybe that means something." That answer shook her more than any battle ever had. Hours passed. She brought him food herself, something no alien general had ever done for a prisoner. When he couldn't hold the cup steady, she helped him drink. Every gesture confused her. She had killed hundreds of enemies without hesitation, so why couldn't she treat this one the same? Late that night, Eli spoke again. "You're wondering what I am, aren't you?" Corinne turned toward him, eyes sharp. "You're not a normal human. Your body, your movements, they were unnatural." "What are you hiding?" he sighed softly. "You deserve the truth." He tapped a control on his wrist and a faint hologram appeared, classified data, symbols in human language. "I was part of Project Prometheus," he said quietly. "A secret Earth experiment to create soldiers who could adapt to alien warfare. We were trained to learn from every fight faster than any AI." Corinne frowned. "Enhanced humans? So Earth prepares for war?" "Not anymore," he said. "The project was shut down. Too dangerous. Most subjects died. I was the only one who walked away." She stepped closer, studying the faint silver lines on his skin that glowed with every heartbeat. "You risked everything. Just to prove a point?" Eli nodded. "I didn't want to be a weapon. I wanted to show your kind that humans don't need to conquer to be strong." Corinne's expression softened, though her voice stayed stern. "And yet you still fought." "I fought because you mocked what I am," he said quietly. "Because your pride blinded you. Someone had to open your eyes." His words cut deep. She turned away, hiding the sting of shame that rose inside her. For years she believed strength meant never bending, but now she wasn't sure. "I should turn you over to the council," she said finally. "They'd pay a fortune to dissect your secrets." Eli smiled faintly. "You won't," she glared at him. "And why is that?" "Because you already know I'm right." Corinne stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she exhaled. "You are bold for someone lying in a recovery pod." He chuckled softly. "Maybe I just know how to read people." That night she couldn't sleep again. She stood by the window watching the stars drift. His words played again and again in her mind. He wasn't like any human she'd known. There was no greed, no fear, only truth. and deep inside, she began to fear that the truth he carried might change her forever. The warship Eclipse Spear drifted silently through the black sea of stars. Inside, the air was heavy with tension. For days, General Corinne had kept her secret hidden, the human who defied her, the one she couldn't kill. But secrets never stay buried for long. On the lower decks, whispers had begun. Officers spoke quietly about their general's strange behavior, her long hours alone in the med bay, her refusal to celebrate victory, the order to keep all reports about the human sealed. It didn't take long for the Zyran Council to notice. That morning, Karen's ship received a direct transmission from High Command. The Emperor himself appeared on her holoscreen, his face stern, his voice sharp as a blade. "General Karen of the Zyran Empire," he said coldly, "we receive reports that you disobeyed battle protocol. You refused to deliver the human remains to Central Command. Explain yourself." Corinne stood tall, her armor gleaming. The human was dead. The remains were unstable for transport. I ordered them destroyed. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Destroyed. Or hidden? Corinne's pulse quickened, but her face stayed calm. Hidden implies fear. I fear nothing. The hollow flickered out, leaving her alone in the silence. But deep inside, she knew. The council didn't believe her. That night, Corinne went to the medbay again. Eli was awake, sitting on the side of the bed, his arm still in a support brace. "You're walking," she said quietly. He smiled. "You don't sound happy about it," she didn't answer. Her voice came low. "They know you're alive." Eli's eyes hardened. "The council?" She nodded. "They sent a probe to verify your death. It's only a matter of time before they discover the truth." He looked at her, calm but serious. "Then you have to choose, turn me in. Or trust me." Her jaw clenched. "You think it's that easy? If they find out I saved you, I'll lose everything, my command, my honor, my people's trust." Eli met her gaze. "Then let them. Sometimes you have to lose something to save what matters." The words hit her harder than any weapon. Before she could reply, the door hissed open. 3 guards entered, their weapons drawn. "General Karen," the lead one said. "By order of the Emperor, you are to surrender the human immediately." Karen turned sharply. "You dare enter my quarters with weapons raised?" "The council suspects treason," the guard replied coldly. "Step aside." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, in one fluid motion, Karen drew her sword. Its violet edge gleamed under the medbay lights. "Leave now," she said softly, "or you won't leave at all." The guards hesitated, then opened fire. Karen moved like lightning. Her blade sliced through the air, deflecting plasma bolts. Sparks flew as metal screamed. Eli ducked behind the bed, his implant flickering weakly. Within seconds, the floor was littered with fallen guards. Corinne stood over them, chest heaving. Eli rose slowly, eyes wide. "You just attacked your own soldiers." "They were no longer mine," she said. "The council has already decided I'm guilty." "Now, we run." "Run?" Eli asked, frowning. "Yes," she said, gripping his arm. "You wanted to see if my heart could feel. Congratulations, you've broken it. Now I'm going to prove it can still protect." They moved quickly through the ship's corridors, alarms blaring behind them. Corinne knew the routes better than anyone. She disabled cameras, locked hatches, and led him to an escape bay. "Once we reach the outer rings, we'll find a neutral system," she said. "You'll be safe there." Eli shook his head. "I'm not leaving without you." She stared at him, eyes glowing faintly. "Don't be foolish, human. You're my weakness now." He smiled faintly. "Maybe that's what makes us strong." A sudden explosion shook the deck. The ship's AI announced, "Warning, internal security breach. All units, detain General Corinne." Her people were hunting her now. Eli grabbed a fallen blaster and handed her one. "If they catch us, they'll kill you." Karen gave a small, almost sad smile. "They'll have to try." They ran together through the smoke-filled halls, fighting side by side. Plasma fire lit the corridors as Karen deflected bolts and Eli covered her flank with precise shots. It was chaos, but also something else. For the first time, they weren't enemies. They were a team. When they finally reached the launch deck, Karen sealed the bay doors. Outside the glass, hundreds of ships waited to intercept them. She turned to him. "Once we leave, there's no going back. The Empire will brand me a traitor." Eli looked into her eyes. "Then let them. You taught me what strength means. Now let me remind you what freedom feels like." Corinne exhaled slowly. "You really are impossible," he smiled. You said that before. Right before I made you bleed. For a second, she almost laughed. Then she hit the controls and the small transport ship roared to life. As they blasted out of the hangar, enemy fire streaked past them, lighting the void. Corinne's voice came steady, cold, yet alive. You wanted to understand me, human. Now you'll see what I do when everything's taken away. Stars streaked past the cockpit as the small transport tore through hyperspace. Behind them, the Xeran Empire burned with anger. A single command ship, Eclipse Spear, now marked General Karen as a traitor. Inside the craft, silence ruled. Captain Eli Ward sat in the co-pilot's seat, his arm bandaged, his eyes studying the woman beside him. Karen's hands gripped the controls, her jaw tight, her expression unreadable. The once proud warrior who ruled entire battlefields now looked strangely human. After hours of flight, they exited warp. Before them floated a quiet moon, gray, cracked, uninhabited. Karen landed the ship gently on the rocky plain. We'll be safe here, she said. For a while, Eli nodded. Safe enough to think? She turned to him sharply. I don't have time to think. The Council will send hunters. Every ship in the sector will have my signal. Eli smiled faintly. Then maybe running isn't what we should do. Karen frowned. What do you suggest? Fight, he said softly. Not for victory. For truth. She stared at him. His words burned through the fear and chaos like sunlight through smoke. They stepped out under a pale sky. The air was cold, thin. Corinne removed her helmet, feeling the wind for the first time in years. It carried no commands, no cheers, no judgment, only silence. Eli limped beside her. When I first met you, he said, I thought you were unbreakable. She glanced at him. And now? Now I see you're more dangerous because you can break and still stand. Corinne let out a small laugh, soft and tired. You speak like a poet, not a soldier. Maybe that's why I survived, he said with a grin. For a moment, they stood quietly. Two enemies turned fugitives under an alien sky. Then the scanners beeped. 3 Xyran cruisers entered orbit above them. Karen's eyes hardened. They've found us, Eli reached for his blaster. Then this ends here, she shook her head. No, this ends my way. Minutes later, the ground trembled as dropships descended. Dozens of armored soldiers surrounded their position. Karen stood in front, unarmed. The leader stepped forward, his armor gleaming with the imperial crest. General Karen, he announced. By order of the Emperor, you are stripped of command and honor. Surrender the human. Eli started to move, but she raised a hand, stopping him. I will not surrender him, she said calmly. The soldiers raised their rifles. Then you die with him. Karen looked at Eli, then slowly she knelt. Gasps rippled through the ranks. The great Corinne, the undefeated general, on her knees in the dust. She lowered her head and spoke, her voice steady but full of fire. If honor means obedience without conscience, then I no longer want it. If strength means silence against truth, then I no longer need it. She turned her gaze upward. This human showed me what our empire forgot, that true power is not in domination but in choice. Her soldiers hesitated, uncertain. Their blasters shook slightly. Eli stepped beside her, kneeling too. She's not your enemy, he said. She's what your future could be, the leader growled. Enough, fire. But no one moved. The youngest soldier, eyes wide, whispered. She was right about everything. In that single heartbeat of doubt, Corinne acted. She activated a signal on her wrist, sending out a broadcast across all channels. Images of her kneeling before the human, her voice echoing through the empire. I was undefeated until I met compassion. I was feared until I learned mercy. Let this be known. The age of cruelty ends today. The soldiers lowered their weapons one by one. The leader shouted orders, but no one obeyed. Above, the command cruisers went silent. Corinne rose slowly, dust falling from her armor. It's over, she whispered. Eli smiled faintly. You made them see. She turned to him. No, you made me see. The sky lit up as the Imperial ships retreated one after another. For the first time, the Xeran Empire withdrew, not out of fear but respect. Karen looked at Eli, her voice soft but strong. You've defeated me, human. Not with weapons, but with heart. Eli shook his head. No, I only reminded you what you already had. She smiled, something rare, something real. Then stay. Help me rebuild what we both lost, he extended his hand. Together, then. She took it. The wind rose again, carrying their laughter across the empty moon. Two souls, once enemies, now stood as equals. And somewhere in the endless night, the galaxy changed.